Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I do actually want to take a moment of silence. Because of, sorry, boy, these things are unexpected sometimes, but we're all hurting, not just the people in Nashville. And our prayers do go to them, as well as to our own community, that we be safe in these times. And so let's just take a moment and, as you wish, think about those that are right now suffering because of this unexpected pain. All right, we are grateful to the team here as we continue this budget process. Our objective in these meetings, and this is to remind our community and our board, is to be able to lay out the cards in front of everybody as to what our goals are. Our budget intends to be aligned with our strategic plan and our strategic goals and our vision for 2030, Opportunity 2030. Tonight's meeting, we have 3 of these meetings. This is our second of them. Tonight's meeting will be led by our team, as they're going to share with us the investment priorities to this budget. To those in the public, in front of us we have a couple documents from the team. First, just the presentation that the team has created, but we already have from them a proposed budget, and I'm sure that's going to be made available as people will look through it. Specifically, I mentioned in the last meeting, in even a few years back when I was running, there's a lot of talk often about how the budget works, how things aren't open. Our goal is absolutely the opposite. It is to be completely transparent. It is to have the community give us feedback and input. I have been a finance director for many years, and as such, you never make everybody happy with a budget, ever. You try your best to accommodate a budget in order to meet the goals and the objectives of our community. And so that is what we're doing, but we wish we had so much more to do so much more. We understand that people have different priorities and different goals, and we try to really say what helps us move this vision forward for the sake of our students and the sake of our community. So thank you, Dr. Robertson. I'm going to hand it to you, and then you guide us through this. If you want to share or speak, I ask the board that you request to speak. I'm going to keep an eye on the little device here that tells us. And then, and again, and this is number 2 of 3 of these meetings. So let's, remember that this is about budgets and not about many other things, though I will always allow the board to share their mind as I chair this committee. But let's try to stick to that so that we can continue the process and be ready to vote for a budget in April. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Appreciate acknowledgement of Nashville and everything that they're going through, and our hearts obviously go out to them. I want to bring your attention to the 2 documents that you mentioned. So the presentation, this is really to help people that are watching follow along with us, also to give you some highlights and differentiate what's kind of new investment compared to previous investments. So obviously, everything's going to be aligned to Opportunity 2030, and we keep pressing here is that we are committed to creating opportunity by design for kids in Hamilton County, and want to make sure that our budget reflects that. So previous meetings, you'll see on the left-hand side, this is kind of where we've been. We've been through the executive summary, gone through Opportunity 2030, talked about funding sources, proposed highlights of the budget. And I want to ask you in your booklet, and I'm sure some of you that have done this before, or even new ones, were expecting something bigger. It will get bigger, and this is a first draft. I'll just point out at the very beginning, this says version 1 and has today's date on it, because this is not a set budget, it's a proposed budget and one that we're getting your input on. I'll ask you in your budget booklet to turn to page 12. That's where we're going to start today in this presentation, really looking at the big bucket pieces and showing how they're aligned to our commitments. What I want to point out on page 12 is that there are, the revenue sources that we're expecting. And then I'll ask you to look at the second chart that says cost of major initiatives. This is what we're focusing on today. And I want to point out there obviously is a big difference between those two numbers. There are some things that we have to do. We have to turn the lights on. We're already committed to a bus contract. We're already committed to paying fees to charter schools, right? And so really what we're talking about in terms of operating are the major costs of those initiatives. Ask you if you want to follow along to detail to flip over to page 16. This is where we're going to get started with every student learns. And you're going to see this as, out of that operating budget, the single largest investment. This is because this is where our faculty and staff salaries go. You'll see that it's almost $266 million investment. So some highlights in every student learns that we want to point out. We have a $3 million increase in our investment in career and technical education. This was a little bit of us playing the new TISA game. Right now, we expect the more students that we get into career and technical education, that FY25 will receive more funds for career and technical education. So this is kind of front-end loading an investment in career and technical education so that we can invest more in FY25. You also see an increase of almost $5 million in exceptional ed and E&L supports. And then finally, a $3.1 million investment for our RTI. What I'll say is this is the first investment in RTI teachers at elementary. We've been doing it where people are basically slip covering seats, but we are explicitly funding a response to intervention. Response to intervention is a mandate that we have to do. It kind of aligns also with the third grade retention, that we want to push those supports down to kindergarten, first, second grade, so that we can get students on track for third grade. So again, every student learns is going to be the largest investment. And again, these that are on the slideshow, those are the new investments. You can look on page 16 and see the totals, where CT is now an investment of over 11. And what we're trying to portray through the slideshow is that of that 11, there's a $3 million new investment into CTE. Does that flow make sense? Because that's how we're going to kind of go through each commitment and then take some questions if you have them. Everybody following? A couple thumbs up. Good. So we'll move to every student belongs. And every student belongs, you see that it's almost a $69 million investment. It's about 13% of that operating budget. This is really where we're pushing in the personalization supports and that piece of the staffing model. You'll notice that in what we're tentatively calling student support coaches now, it's about a $5.6 million new investment. You'll see an increase in social, we're putting this into one new investment, social workers, regular counselors, and then college and career advisors. It's almost a $5 million new investment. And then the biggest piece of this is the supplemental portion of the new staffing model. Remember the hybrid model where we've got the base and then we've got the supplemental that allows schools to make some individual decisions. Guided autonomy is what we're calling it, to really support kids in the way that they see fit, and that's a $29 million new investment. The last new investment actually comes from our conversation at the last meeting. You guys had a lot of conversations about supporting extracurriculars, whether that is band programs. Battle Academy just this past weekend put on a pretty fine performance of a play that we could support kids in those options now. And this 356 is actually $356,000, an increase in the school allocation funds that would allow schools to make decisions around how to support those extracurricular activities. That comes from our conversation the last meeting. I'll just remind for the public that several of you made comments about the need to support extracurricular activities, which obviously fits really well with Every Student Belongs. Moving right along to Every School Equipped, and just a reminder of Every School Equipped is really talking about the operations side, the facilities, the technology that goes into our school. So you'll see new investments. There's a $4 million increase in capital maintenance. So our capital maintenance budget would adjust from $3 million to $6 million, and we'll also take out and taking the capital maintenance crew that was originally funded and in the past has been funded out of that $3 million. We're pulling that crew out, which is just at $900,000, and putting them in GP. So it's a true $6 million investment into capital maintenance. We have a fire crew that's about $300,000. We've had multiple conversations with you about our issues with fire marshal, and what we found out over the past 3 months to what's been working is to have a crew that is dedicated to addressing fire code issues. I know it sounds like a big investment, but we have a lot of deficiencies that we need to address, and we're talking about carpenters, electricians, that when they're not addressing these needs will push in to support other capital maintenance projects, but we feel like this is a needed add to the maintenance. Also see a technology infrastructure. What we have done really well the past several years is put devices in teachers' hands, put devices in kids' hands. It's not as shiny, but what you've got to do is back up those devices. So things like routers, switches, and wiring, if we don't keep up with that infrastructure, the devices that we're putting out and the technology won't support it. And then you see a increase in the textbooks and materials of $3 million increase. A lot of that is anticipating the math textbook adoption that we spoke about at our last regular board meeting. All right, and then moving on to Every Employee Valued. So in Every Employee Valued, you see just over a $31 million investment. The things that we want to highlight here and the increases are about a $15 million increase in salaries. What this is proposing is a 5% pay increase for all employees across the board that's certified and classified. You see the certified step increase and classified compensation of $6 million. This is specifically addressing some issues that we've discussed previously. It hasn't come up in the last 2 budget sessions, but it came up in previous board sessions with classified compensation. When we did the adjustments last year, it created some compression issues. So if you remember, we had a couple of people that came and spoke to the board that have been with us 20 years and didn't see as big of an increase. So this line is addressing that compression. So not only giving a 5% increase, but then allotting money to go ahead and fix that compression just on the classified scale. differentiated compensation, a $7.2 million investment, and this is really taking money out of ESSER. We've been really funding all of diff comp out of ESSER, and when we say differentiated compensation, this is for hard to staff positions. So for example, math positions across the board, science positions across the board, and then recognizing that we've got some hard to staff schools that we need to support as well. And then finally, employee stipends and professional development. The employee stipends, for attending professional development for some leadership positions and other options that we want to provide opportunity for growth for all of our employees. And then finally, every community served. So in every community served, you see about a $7 million investment in every community served. There are several big bucket items here. We've talked pretty extensively about the need for more alternative education program seats, and this comes up quite a bit when we're talking about behavior in the classroom. We've said how we need more options than just the regular setting or going straight to Washington alternative, and so there's an increase in providing those alternative seats of $1.5 million. Family and community engagement, that's not necessarily a new investment, but it's a new investment, as is student success planning, in that we're putting it into GP. So it's coming out of ESSER and into the general purpose budget. So I'm going to go back to every student learns. I wanted to really run through that really quickly and give you a chance to kind of process some of the big bucket items, knowing that we can go back and have some discussion about the budget details. And again, I'll point out that the pages in your book show the total investments, not just the new investments that are shown on the presentation. So, Mr. Perez, I turn it over to the board for discussion or questions.
So we'll do this one by one. So we'll start with every student learns. If any board member has any questions about some of those items or questions around some of that funding in general, please feel free to click on your little device. And how do you not have that?
Because I am this. What do you not have? Oh, you have that.
But it's okay. Let's just keep her. No, I'm kidding. Do you have a question, Tiffany? Go for it. Sorry, Ms. Robinson.
Well, I guess just only on the, because we're only talking about this page right now. I was just curious, like, can you tell me briefly or quickly, like, where to find the total that we're spending on career and technical education staff in the booklet?
On page 16,
Okay.
if you look on the chart at the bottom, it's the second line. It's $11.1 million, and again, that's an investment in the staffing for career and technical education.
Okay. So I think a few weeks ago you mentioned to me a middle school opportunity with CTE. Is that included in this too?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. That's awesome.
So pushing and again, it's playing a little bit of the long game because the funding will come retroactively. So we'll get funded for FY25 based on how many kids that we have in career and technical seats next year.
And I was going to mention one thing, that does not, this is so the traditional schools, so the Harrison Bay Future Ready is in the alternative programs. So this is just the schools that are done through the staffing model.
Okay.
So there's actually more in CTE. When you look, I just want to let you know
Okay.
the way we
So
calculate
we
that.
should think about how we're spending CTE dollars between this line item and also Future Ready Institute. Is that right?
So Future Ready does not fall into CTE. Okay. Go for it. Explain further.
It's the workforce development component, Harrison Bay, Sequoia, the Career Construction Academy.
That's
So
what we're calling CTE in this. No,
Alternative
that's what we're-
programs.
Alternative
It's
programs.
that.
Okay. So CTE is programs within our community schools where our students can receive technical certification for some item. And we're saying that already in middle school, we're beginning them in some of those programs.
We're adding at least one CTE teacher in every middle school.
Okay. Every middle school.
Every middle school.
What I mean, I guess, will it vary from middle school to middle school, what they're gonna do, or are they just gonna?
So I'll let Dr. Stewart, one of the courses that you can take is a career explorations, and we've been talking about this for a number of years of how to like get exposure to kids in middle school. So that's one option, and then there's the
Yeah, so the Career Connections or the Career Exploration course, they're actually given high school credit for that, and there's actually 3 that you can use in middle school. We don't expect they'll take 3 years of it, but they will use it in their rotations. And we're really excited about that because it really aligns well with the Portrait of a Graduate work, where we're going to do like surveys of what their interests are and what they're what they're good at, and that'll be a digital portfolio that'll follow them kind of all the way up. The other thing that the state is doing is really prioritizing the computer science work, and so some of our schools are already hiring a second CTE because they really like the rotation of the career explorations and really certifying people for that computer science that's a year away.
Ms. Robinson?
Where does the construction school at the Barger school, what column does that fall under?
the alternative.
That's the alternative, okay. Tell me again about the exceptional education.
So this is the exceptional education investment this is just out of the GP, right? So there will be additional coming out of IDEA. It's this investment for teachers, educational assistants that are required for some students with disabilities. So it's there to support all of our students with disabilities.
Is that where the principals will be able to hire people where the needs are?
I think you're talking more about the supplemental
The
that every
supplemental.
student belongs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move to the next one. Every student belongs.
Oh, can we back up just a minute?
Yeah.
here? This elementary response to interventions RTI teacher, what exactly is involved in that $3 million investment, new investment? Exactly what all is?
It is a position at every elementary school, a teaching position that focuses specifically on.
Is that the one that's
RTI.
gonna take the students that cannot stay in the classroom? Is that, no?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
This is like, I mean, we've been required to do response to intervention for years. And
Yeah,
this
I
has
know,
not been
but the new
funded, so-
investment, I just wondered what's different.
Yeah, the difference is we just haven't been funding it. We've been forcing schools to figure out how to like
Oh.
slip cover a teacher or how to pull an educational assistant or an assistant principal has been coordinating it. So it's an investment to say, we expect you to do this and do it well. We need to provide you the resource.
Okay.
We'll have a teacher at every school. One challenge, because I think this will accumulate as we move forward, even in all of that, is we can talk about all these positions, right? All we want, we can talk about all these positions. Everyone in the country is struggling to fill positions. So at one point, I want to come back to how we as an organization are going to be competitive in our hiring processes and our, because we are fighting the entire country for these positions right now, and we're hoping to elevate ourselves in a way that's out of the ordinary. So we'll come back to that. But all right, every student belongs. If there are any comments or questions. All right, seems like we're,
Well, there's one, go ahead, Chrissy. you have one.
So are the support coaches the that's the previous other body of work?
Yeah,
Okay.
we put that as the new name
Okay.
placeholder. We've got to decide on that eventually because Mary Ellen, from a code perspective, is getting frustrated.
from a code perspective? Oh, from a,
Budgeting,
yeah.
code.
So I do have a question about that, which is technically not a fiscal question, but by this being a new position and administration selecting, I guess, the body of work around this position, is that gonna be like reevaluated on it, like after this first year in case it's not effective? Because I've heard, just being very transparent, heard that some people are, just placing teachers there because they don't wanna lose teachers. And so I just wanna, based on what I've heard it to be, I don't want that to be the case.
Yeah, 100%.
So I just wondered if we'd be reevaluating.
I think the good thing about priority-based budgeting is it allows you to reevaluate
Okay.
every year.
And I would say that one of the arguments that I read and saw out there regarding this was, again, measuring the effectiveness. So just an encouragement to all of you. Mr. King.
Yeah, so the category supplemental staffing model dollars, that's the biggest category. Tell me what that includes.
So that's the portion of the staffing model that is going to schools for them to make decisions
teachers.
about their school. And so remember, it's based on following similar to TISA. So there's a allocation for every student. There's a supplemental allocation for economically disadvantaged, student with disability, all the way down.
So it is bodies, not, it's.
It isn't necessarily bodies. It could be that the school invest in stipends for teachers to do tutoring after school. It could be a body, but it could be anything that is student facing and supporting.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Thurman.
Yeah, I think, so there's 10.5 million additional dollars taking the seed coaches, new social workers, counselors, college and career advisors and all that. Now, I know that last year I thought we put counselors in each school. Did we do that? I think we had counselors already in every school. And we already had college and career advisors in every high school, I think. We already had all that. Well, where's the almost $5 million increase? What is that for?
So you're looking at moving counselors down to 1 to 350 students. Industry standard would be 1 to 250, so we're still not where we need to be, but it is increasing that to get the ratio to 1 to 350. We're putting social workers, one at every school that's over 400 kids, and a half of one at every school that's under 400. College and career advisor, one of the things that we're seeing, and we're hearing this from industry and with things like Build Within coming in for the pre-apprenticeships, is there's a little bit of a different skill set in thinking about like college and college going, and then workforce development and how we support kids on the career and technical side. And so we feel like that investment is needed, not just having one, at a high school that's got 1,000 kids, that we need more support there to help them apply for colleges, but also think about like, how do I get into a pre-apprenticeship that leads to a job?
Okay, well, I see, of course, you know how my feelings about the seed coaches, but, I don't know if everyone got the email. I guess they did. I don't know sometimes who gets the email, if it's just me or it's the whole board. Some people were concerned that instead of band coaches and some choral leaders, they're taking on a seed coach, like say getting rid of a position for the students. Are we seeing some of that going on?
Not to my knowledge. I know that there was specifically at Barger Academy early on, we had this floating around that their theater arts and dance programs were being cut, and that's not the case. They are in their supplemental dollars. So I think there's been some confusion that we're trying to work through, of people thinking that supplemental is maybe ESSER dollars, or that it's a grant that's going to go away. They're all on GP, right? And so I don't know if maybe some confusion is coming from there or not, but I'm aware of that specific confusion at Barger.
Okay. Well, I just want to be sure that that's certainly not happening. So we're putting an additional $10.5 million into all of this student support. I certainly hope we see a difference. I'm kind of with Caritza. I want to know how we're going to measure this, and I don't want it to be one of those programs that everything we question says, well, it takes 5 years to see a difference. Well, we don't have 5 years to see a difference. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to see a difference within a year if we're going to make this kind of investment.
Mr. Groh?
Well, Gary asked part of my question. So the seed coaches are listed under student support coaches, right? That's
Yes,
the
sir.
seed coaches.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as TISA dollars are following students, you could actually have a situation where a school with a smaller population could get more money than another school that's got 100 or 200 more students. So that's
In the
possible.
supplemental,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at these large schools, so say Signal Mountain or East Hamilton. So considering the number, or Howard, considering the number of students, are we going to have, is the district going to put an extra social worker in, or is that up to each individual principal?
No, so the social workers are in the base, and it's, again, 0.5 for schools under 400 and 1 for every school over 400. Now, in the supplemental, a school could decide that maybe, say, Signal Mountain with 1,300 kids, one social worker isn't enough, they're gonna invest in the second one.
Yeah, but that's up to the individual principal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okey dokey.
Ms. Robinson?
How many schools prior to the seed coaches have counselors and social workers?
All of them.
All
All
of
of
them,
them
all
do.
of them have. It's
I
just
guess
that
my
it's-
question is, why do we need more?
They have access to a social worker. Every school has a measure of FTE social work coming to them. That might be 1 day a week, it might be 2, but they're all getting some exposure to social workers. This is a lot more support.
Obviously, over 5 million more. Okay, I'm like the rest of them. I hope we see measure in a year and we can evaluate going forward. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Groen, yours is on. I don't know if you have another comment.
Yes, I had a second question if everybody else is. So Jill?
Ms. Blackthorn.
I was just going to say, to give you an idea, I know that we have 27 social workers countywide for 76 schools right now. This is making sure that there's either a full-time social worker or a half-time social worker in every single school. That's a marked increase in access to social workers for students.
May I follow up on that? Will they have a different role than a regular social worker as far as treating the kids' concerns or issues?
I think what it does is what we have now is you have counselors that are doing social worker duties, and you've got assistant principals that are doing counselor duties or social work. Social workers are trained professionals, and they need to do social work duties, and counselors need to do counselor duties, and APs need to do it. So it's really putting the bodies in place that can do all the pieces of work that our kids are requiring now.
The whole. Well, I think a lot of people are really concerned about the type of one-on-one, maybe overreach in the questions and the treatment of the children. But I'm all for it if they see an improvement. I'm concerned about the constant encroachment in schools.
Mr. Groen, you're waiting for the last, or
Yes.
go ahead?
I appreciate being able to follow up. What is our average pay with benefits for our social workers?
I can get you that, I just need to pull up the right document.
Give us 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, hey,
Got it.
used to have to count inventory by hand.
We have
So-
lots of spreadsheets.
Yeah, some of us in this room actually bought, a nickel candy bars and 8-ounce Coke bottles.
I do remember when you get gas for 87 cents. So.
I remember you did.
No, I used to fill up, we got 5 gallons for $1.
There you go, Porter.
It-
Told you.
You guys finished?
That's with benefits, it's 77,593.
77.5.
Yeah, that's with benefits, all
Now,
health
is
and-
that, is that all of the benefits or just salary? Okay,
That's all
Salary and
benefits.
benefits.
so it's the same salary as a seed coach, right? Close.
Pretty close.
See?
Yeah. Pretty close.
And this is average, so again, sometimes it's years of experience, and it's looking at the average of all.
I thought Seacoast was gonna be up around 100 months.
No, they're like, they're in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's like when we change words in our policy, you know, to be up with whatever the current fad is. And I don't understand why we're just not hiring another social worker. But they don't have to be licensed social workers to be a seed coach. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're different duties, though. I mean.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
But I would think a social worker, I would think that if you're gonna be a seed coach, what you're gonna be doing is interacting with counselors and social workers, and I would think it would be a requirement that you have to be a social worker to be a seed coach. You're doing social, emotional, academic development. Why aren't we making it a requirement for seed coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that point. What I would point to is that they are different bodies of work. I agree that a social worker would be more than qualified to do the student support position. The reality is, to Mr. Perez's point, is if we wanted to hire 150 social workers right now, we would not be able to hire 150 social workers.
Well, here is what I don't want to see, Dr. Robbins. I don't want to see this as another administrative position
100%.
for people who are failed principals or failed teachers. To me, that would, no, I can't support this if that's the way it's going to be. I can support this if we do everything we can, and whoever we hire in that position is going to have to do some development training in social work.
100%.
That should be a requirement.
Yep. It is.
And the school district might need to pay for that.
We will.
Because again, I mentioned it at our last budget meeting, or the last meeting we had. A lot of this, we're talking about, cognitive development theory. And Mrs. Black could speak to that. It requires certain training. Would you agree, Mrs. Black? And we're not requiring seed coaches to know how to do that, but we're expecting them to do it and coordinate with social workers that are trained to do it.
Yeah. I think that your last point is really well said. Coordinate with social workers, right? That if a piece of that is needed, they coordinate with the social worker to get it. But again, I think that we were pretty clear in the original job descriptions of student support coaches, and that they're making connections with kids, right? And again, Joe Smith's not here to defend himself, but Joe Smith said in our last meeting, he would have made a really fine seed coach, and the last thing I'll point out is in terms of hiring, these are school-based positions. So our principals will be in charge of hiring the best person for their school.
I understand.
It's not me, it's not anyone sitting here at this table. So the idea that it turns into I think you said a failed administrator's position, that's not our intent, and I don't think any principal would have that intent either.
Well, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Robinson, if we're going to start seeing significant improvements in our discipline and in our academics, it all starts from you two. And it all flows from you. And when you have said many times that you can hold me accountable, I'm going to be here for the next 3.5 years or more.
You got a little bit longer than I do.
Yeah. As soon as your daughter graduates?
I do want us to move on.
Okay,
if
I'm sorry.
possible. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I
have more people. I
apologize.
have more people. So, Ms. Jones, please.
Yes, sir.
So to speak to Faye about the addition to social workers. So when I started on the board way back in 2014, we were nowhere near what we have today. And I was a really big advocate of increasing the social worker roles in the schools, because you had schools like 5 and 6 schools sharing a social worker. And just based on my experience as now an 18-year veteran in the field of social work as a licensed master social worker, Larry, that was not good enough. And I often think that's probably how we got here. It's just being very transparent. That's probably part of how we got to where we are today with our kids in community in the school. But nevertheless, I will say that we're still not where we need to be. According to the BEP, we've never been where the BEP thought we should be, and they weren't funding us. So I do want to share that, because even with the formula, we weren't getting the amount of money we needed. So we always were trying to, from our own dollars, support as best we could. And even now, with the amount that we have now, I know in the Midtown Learning Community, we still have 3 schools sharing a social worker. And even in some of our other more rural areas, you have schools like that that are sharing truancy and sharing social workers. And it's just, once again, I say this all the time, when you look at urban social work and rural social work, they mimic each other. And so there's just not enough. We do need more individuals in those buildings to do that. I do think there is a difference between the role of a social worker and Larry, based on what I went to school 6 years for, 2 degrees later. I would not be the equivalent to a seed coach or student support coach. I would not be the equivalent. I could do the job, but it's not the same. And you can't train a general person on the job training to be a social worker. The state would not recognize that. So it's 2 different things. Aside from that, having worked in multiple places in the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County with my license and my master's, I wouldn't come work for Hamilton County Schools for $77,000, including my benefits. I don't care how much I love kids. I wouldn't do that, because I have a kid in my own household to maintain. And so I do think when we do find the individuals that will come for that, they clearly, I promise you, Jill can tell you this and any other peers, they clearly want to be here. Because they would not. Most people with a master's level education, even a BSW, because you have to pay for this license, they're not gonna come. LBSW is not gonna come for this. So they truly gotta love and have a passion for what they're gonna do to come into this. I think there is some concern when you talk about, I had some concern about when you talked about the qualifications for seed. So it does require you to have some type of background. I know that because I've had several staff members in District 5 to be very bothered by the fact that they've been doing this type of work, but they don't have the education, so they can't do the job. So once again, when you think about preparation and qualification to do the job, I think that Dr. Robertson and Zach and Dr. Stewart, they did put those parameters in there to try to make sure, for the sake of the community, I guess in popular or unpopular opinion, that they were meeting whatever specifications people thought they had. I would tell you that we have staff in Hamilton County Schools that would beg to differ with what we've asked of that seed position. Which, if you think about that, Joe Smith has done amazing things, but he wouldn't qualify. Well, he would now, but I think about that. But, you know, like if it had been when he first started out, he wouldn't have qualified. That's what I meant to say. He wouldn't have qualified, which just meant he would be just like a lot of the individuals I know working in Brainerd High School and Dalewood and Woodmore and Howard and Sale Creek or Hickson or wherever they are, because we have lots of individuals that just love supporting our children, but they don't meet the qualifications, but they would like to do that position and probably will be darn good at it. So I think we have to, when we start to compare things, we can't get caught up, once again, going back to last week's convo or whatever we had school board meeting. We don't want to get caught up in all of that, because at the end of the day, if I had a kid that was going down the wrong path and they met a Joe Smith at 20 years old and he could have done something significant for them, I would have wanted Joe Smith in his life.
You wouldn't want a Joe Smith in his 20s.
Well, you get what I'm saying though, Rhonda. Pre-qualification. Let me say this. A Joe Smith pre.
30s and you wouldn't
A Joe Smith pre-qualification is what I'm saying.
We won't pick on Joe Smith.
I don't know, Rhonda, because I ain't old enough to, I don't know, well, I don't know.
I've known him a long time.
But, so I mean, and once again, there we are, right? So you have to think about that. But I'm just saying, if there are some people that don't. So I do want to say when we begin to talk about these things, we do want to be cognizant not to just throw positions around for the sake of trying to justify an opinion, because I mean, I'm a social worker and I take pride in my training and education, and so I don't like to be compared to, and vice versa. I know other people, you just don't want to be compared when that's really not your skill set.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, one thing that I have heard from some teachers is because there's going to be so many more seed coaches, social workers, counselors, people like that in schools. They said, they have to give us time to teach. They're all the time pulling kids out of the classroom. And the teachers say sometimes these kids maybe have had a problem maybe at one point, but just because you have a problem at one point don't mean it's perpetual, that it's going to last forever. And they say they're afraid that they will continue to pull more and more kids out of the classroom to justify their jobs, because some of these smaller schools that maybe don't have a lot of problems, what are those people going to be doing all day? And so that too can be a problem. And the teachers say because it's so disruptive and so many of those kids miss so much classroom time. So I think that's something maybe that's getting missed in all that. We are in the education business. All of this other stuff's important, but our main charge is to educate these students. And if we're continually pulling them out of the class all the time for their social, emotional needs, and some of them maybe just have a few down days and we think they're depressed for life, that's just not the case. And like I say, not every kid in Hamilton County has social, emotional needs. So I just think that's something we need to consider as well. You get all of these people in the classroom, and I'd much rather see more academic people in the classroom, but nobody ever asks me. So this just seems to be where all of the, like I say, the trendy, this is where everybody's looking now to get more and more help. This seems to be the thing to do this day and time. But like I say, we just need to think about how much time we're taking kids out of their class.
Ms. Robinson?
Okay, I see rational and emotional in this situation. I see facilities, teachers, and over 45,000 students. And I see principal, vice principal, counselors, social workers, bus drivers, essential workers. If the children who are have emotional problems, does a teacher recognize it, or how many go to the teacher and say, I'm really having a tough time, or would they go to this group over here? I'd like to know the existing.
Yeah, I think you're going to see different scenarios, right? I mean, really nothing to base this on except for my experience. My experience is kids go to the adult that they trust, right? And for some, that's the band teacher. For some, that's the social worker, seed coach, a principal, an SRO. And so kids are going to go to the person they trust. And again, what we're trying to do, and we've heard from teachers, is right now in a lot of schools, kindergarten or first grade teachers are going to feel solely responsible for the 18 kids in their classroom, even though when those kids may have very different needs. And so we're trying to put supports in place so that we are supporting teachers and really changing the environments within our schools.
But who decides when that child should see a social worker?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a combination of aspects, and of course there are guidelines, and parents would be involved. And again, want to make it clear that some of these interactions, like seed coaches, aren't necessarily pulling every kid. A seed coach could have 5 kids. They just need to make sure they go fist bump before school starts. Right?
So I'm going to request of the board this, because we are getting into action of how this is going to work out. This is a budget. If you have an issue on budget, I would invite you to discuss budget about this, discuss activity around it, please, all day with the team and the staff and your concerns, or at a board meeting, but I would ask that for the work session of budget, we stick to budgetary questions, please. And I respect everybody's opinion and voice in this, but we do want to look at the budget and move forward. We still have 3 other items regarding budget that I would like for us to discuss. I've got a couple people with statements or questions. I don't know if that's still open. You have a question?
Going forth, can you all provide the job description for the school social worker, the counselor, the support coach, and truancy officer, so that the board is able to see the variance in the roles?
We actually have a
Case
crosswalk.
management, yeah, a crosswalk.
Yeah, we have a crosswalk of duties instead of job descriptions. We'll get you that. I think something that might be helpful, that I think is, we all understand, is a child is homeless, right? They've lost their home. The person in the building who's gonna help them find some stable housing is the social worker. The person who is going to respond to the kid because they didn't sleep last night and they, acted out in the classroom is the seed coach. It's very different. The seed coach isn't gonna go find a house. The seed coach knows that the child isn't sleeping at night, and that's contributing to how they're doing in school, and so they're gonna give them some strategies to reset. When you're really tired, maybe you could stand in the back of the room. Do you need, they're gonna give them strategies for that challenging time. But the social worker is gonna try to connect the family to the resources that can solve that need. So it's very, very different, even though it's the root of that concern is still homelessness. So they need a house, and they need to be able to live in the world when they're tired and hungry, right? And so how do we help them do that?
I'd like to return the board to the topic of budget, but Ms. Thurman, are you still?
Oh,
no. Okay. Ms. Jones, do you have another comment?
No, I just was gonna ask about the crosswalk.
Okay, you're still on. All right. Every school equipped. Well, I actually had one comment on budget, and so school allocation funds, I appreciate very much your increase of $356,000 for extracurricular. That equals within 79 schools, $4,500 per school, divided by, let's say, we use the number of Signal Mountain, 1,300 students. That's less than $40 per student. I do appreciate that you heard us. I do, but I will keep insisting on.
That was his backhanded way of saying you didn't fund enough.
Just a reminder that 356 is additional. So
Yeah, no, I know it's additional.
2.2.
We're already doing what we're doing. We're gonna add an extra with the cost and increase of inflation. We're gonna give each student an average of about $40 or less, if I do the math again, to be able to participate in the opportunities that extracurricular brings. So I don't wanna dismiss the fact that you heard us, but I'm gonna keep pushing for these kids to be having as much opportunity as possible to do as many things, because that opens an incredible amount of doors for our students and helps on a lot of these areas as well that we're talking about. So, all right, every school equipped. Any comments, any questions regarding the budget around every school equipped? Yes, sir. So we have Mr. Keene.
So we're at 6 million, and that's good because that doesn't include salaries, which that's a big step. My question is, and if you remember at the very beginning of the year, it started in really June, July. There was a large thing in August about competitiveness with North Georgia and the private schools on our athletic facilities too. And I'm just curious, does this 6 million include athletic maintenance? Is it, or where does athletic field maintenance to improve facilities? And I know now that CSLA has a turf field, Tyner's gonna have a turf field. I know, that there's still maintenance involved. Something I shared it with Mary Ellen there, for health issues. Turf fields are supposed to be cleaned every other year. There's certain machines that do that. I gave her a thing there. But I guess what I'm thinking about is, you know, maintaining, improving the fields that we have right now at the schools that we have, not necessarily building new fields and all that. Where does athletic maintenance fall?
So that's not necessarily in this capital maintenance piece. There are times where we pull money out of fund balance to do improvement projects for athletics. I would not be surprised if there is a push at coming out of the mayor's facilities committee of some dollars around improving athletic facilities. But this is for, you know, our maintenance throughout the year, new roofs, you know, things like that.
All right, so nowhere in our budget do we cover athletic facility.
School allocation funds, we're working on, you know, that we just talked about, you know, we're working on how that could be used towards things like that, but it's not us directing money, it would be the school directing that money.
Mr. Grove?
So I want to understand the line between the capital fund that the county commission provides. For example, the new track at Eastridge High School to be put in this summer. That $750,000 doesn't come out of any budget of ours. So where is my idea of capital maintenance is the money we use specifically to maintain and repair existing buildings. Is that correct?
That's it, yes, sir.
6 million's not enough. I know that it's more than we will have spent for probably your entire career in a year. It's not enough, Justin. It's not enough. I would
agree with
like-
you. This is the card game.
I understand.
Where you pull it from.
Yeah, this is the card game, and we can pull it, you know, so.
Well, I would like to see it at least 8 million and plan on moving it up to 10 million next year. So that's what I would like to see based upon the little bit that I know about all the schools I've been in. So, thank you, sir.
Ms. Jones?
So, with the capital maintenance, going forth with facility, discussions and prioritization, new buildings, repairs, updates, additions, whatever may be, how can we, I guess with this 6 million or 8 million or 10 million, how are we able to, and once again, I know this is a card game, but gauge like full completion of a situation? So since I've been on the board, and y'all were not in leadership this time, but just some examples. We had, Seal Creek didn't have a football field, but it had a school. Then you had East Hamilton, who got a new football field. Then they didn't have bathrooms. Then, just couldn't understand. Then you had,
Something happened at Howard, the new.
Something was at Howard.
Like no lights or something. I don't know.
Central, new track, no lights. Brainerd got, and I know we were piecemealing, but I'm just giving these examples so we don't keep doing this. Brainerd got a new track, bleachers was giving you splinters, and no lights. Now we have CSLA, and I feel like for the past 2 weeks I've gotten a list of things that that the school is missing. I don't know if it was supposed to be there.
I would love to send me that list.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if it's supposed to be there, or it wasn't supposed to be there, or something that they just won't, or, I mean, I got some thoughts on that, but nevertheless. However, I think I'm just trying to figure out if we could, going forth, this is a budget question, Marco, which would better help me with my ask for capital maintenance. If I could have a total dollar amount for what it looks like for a school to have everything it's supposed to have.
We had that.
You got that.
Well, I'm still confused. Well, I mean, I feel like I got it for Tina, but I'm still a little confused because I'm scared that when Tina get up, it's gonna be something missed. I'm gonna get a list. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out do we, maybe what I'm asking for is a package. So like if I was buying the pictures, I know everything that's coming in my package. What is the standard school package? Because some of this stuff I'm pretty sure is, I don't know, I'm confused.
Some of it depends on a lot, I mean, if you think about, Tyner's a really good example, like go back to, East Hamilton Middle School is the most recent example. At East Hamilton Middle, you had a plot of land that allowed to put a soccer field, a football field, baseball field, softball. Tyner, you don't have as much room to do that, so that's why the turf went on that field. There's a practice field and a turf game field that supports all those athletics. Work with the city on the baseball and the softball field on that property that we own on the back. So it's looking at the programming to put things in place. We've corrected that issue, but we're talking about an issue that, you know, goes back decades.
Well, because I'm just trying to figure out what's the difference in a chair and a posture chair and a folding chair. I mean, is the band room supposed to, and this is just an example, but is it supposed to have a posture chair or is it just supposed to have a chair?
We put in chairs. Now there are, like, posture chair is a great example, right? Posture chair is something that, to Mr. Perez's point, if we had more money to put in, then we would say, yeah, we'll buy a brand new French horn and a posture chair for every French horn player in the county. But that's not, we don't have.
Okay,
that
I just want to make sure because, and this, like I said, this is a budget question because what happens is when things, I just need this for my, but what happens is when we start to talk about facilities and things, people are going to say, well, we're supposed to have this, and I'm confused on, and that's why I was saying if there was something like what comes with it, and then what is like a package that you add on, like when you buy a car, flat rate, base, and then an add-on. Only because I think that's a question budget-wise when we look at how much money we need for things. If we're trying to,
Can I contend that we think about this budget line is not those big projects?
gotcha, okay.
This is
Those
think about your
maintenance.
house. When you add on to your house, that's not coming out of what you budget every year to fix your AC or repair a roof or to wipe the windows down. This is like the bottom up stuff, the little things that we've got to do every year. Keep in mind, there is an additional $2 million that's in maintenance for even smaller stuff.
Gotcha, okay.
But the big things, it's coming out of bond issues.
Gotcha.
I mean, all those projects you mentioned
Or bond issues.
were bond issues.
Right. I just wanted, for the public.
Yeah.
So they understand.
Ms. Thurman?
Okay, it says there's a $4 million increase. Okay, how much money was in the capital maintenance to begin with? Like $2 million,
It
right?
was, yeah, it was 3, but the 4. is
Okay,
somewhat
but
new.
the 900,000 of it was in the, okay, so technically we've just given 3 million.
But we took out 900.
But that 900 was already in the budget.
But it couldn't go towards projects because it was paying for the guys that do the work.
Yeah, okay, I got that. But
So
still,
really it's
but still in the
6.
maintenance, I got this. I know exactly what they've done. But still, it looks like we've given them an extra, okay, we've given $4 million. But see, that dropped us down. We still were 2 because it used to be 3. Before that, it was 4, so we were going downhill. So now we're just getting back up to where we were back when Jesse Register was here, which is 20 years ago. This is one of the things that people beat us up with. Of course, I found out a long time ago that this is the best way to get people to start screaming for more money for schools is let the schools fall down where the parents have to come in and see all this stuff and they start clamoring for more money. And really that onus is on us because we're spending money on everything else except the school buildings. I mean, to me, this is pathetic. I've said this for years. Like I said, I've lived this nightmare. I've seen it. I mean, really, you think about 79 school buildings, and we're just getting a $4 million increase, and we're spending millions on so many other things that are going to affect all of the kids, all 45,000 students in this school system. We're spending 10.5 on, like I say, more counselors and more seed coaches and more all this other stuff. And that will, and yeah, there's a lot of kids that need that kind of support, but not all 45,000 kids. But all 45,000 kids need a safe school, one they don't have to go in with the roofs leak and all these other maintenance issues that need to be taken care of. I just cannot support just giving them $4 million. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Mr. King?
I was, explain the textbook and materials, like what all that includes. That's not just math, right?
So the majority of it is gonna go to that, and then it also, there's some ongoing materials that we have to purchase, consumables, for the literacy adoption, things like that.
All right, so depending on which program, we have that coming up, I saw we got invites for that. You know, I was just curious if there's, amounts there that's workable or not, so.
Yeah, and we've developed the,
And yes, I agree with Rhonda, there needs to be more in the capital maintenance.
Or really, to me, I think
Ms. Black?
use of the word capital.
Excuse me, Ms. Black?
Hello. So what you said earlier was that the bigger projects are not in this. So when we had our joint meeting with the county commission and we presented, what was it, 12 roofing projects totaling $15 million, I believe. So that, are we prioritizing a few and trying to chip away at that list of roofing projects? Because I know we've talked about Dalewood. I've seen the leaking at Dalewood. I've also seen a giant trash can catching water at Lookout Valley Elementary in my district. So how are, I guess, what's on deck for next year?
We can get that list for maintenance.
Okay. And also, just for the broader public, I know that school safety is kind of like top of mind right now. We're done with phase one, where with the hardening of entrances, correct?
We're done with phase 3.
Okay. So we've gotten hardened entrances at all 76 schools that we have, or no?
No.
Okay.
Several more.
A few more. Is that coming from?
No, it's in another pot of money that was approved a while back.
Okay. But those are scheduled for
They're
ongoing.
I'm being vague because
Yeah.
of security issues.
We're
like-
intentionally
Sure.
vague on these
Sure.
subjects.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the public understands that we do have these goals. They are ongoing. We are chipping away at these projects and making moves to secure the schools that we have. And that money has already been set aside and allocated, and it's just contracting it out and finishing the projects. Okay.
Ms. Robinson?
So following up with, Carissa, as far as softball field but no lights, not a nice theater but no lighting, where will that type of money come from?
So, again, those big projects come from bond
Bonds.
issues. What the historical piece of this is that not all buildings were built with athletic packages. So East Hamilton High School is one everyone goes back to. It was built, wasn't a football field, wasn't a baseball field, and over time the community built up the fields. We have moved away from that and are putting full athletic packages. The reality is, though, we've got to go back and correct issues that have been long-standing. One of the projects that was mentioned was a softball field at Howard. There's not a softball field at Howard. We put one in 2 years ago that we pulled from fund balance. So we can always pull from fund balance to address large issues.
Because in visiting the schools, like the others have said, 6 million would be eaten up in months. Okay, thank you.
So, Mary,
Oops, okay. Yeah, so each year we also have been putting in from fund balance. So last year with the original 3 million and then additional, as we put in 15.8 into capital maintenance. So, you know, it's actually a good practice to sometimes because it's money you have in the bank and you can set this aside and decide which project, just like at home, you decide, okay, we're gonna do this remodeling project once you have the funds rather than trying to, pay it from operations. So that's one thing that we've been looking at, but I think that it is an ongoing to figure out how much we can put in and keep building towards that.
Ms. Black?
So, one of the things that we're doing with fund balance this year is that the project to address the lunchroom at Howard, the renovations there that are going to happen.
that's actually coming out of this
this budget?
Not this exact, but
Okay.
this line currently.
The line item, the money that we have on hand for this year, and those, is that renovation gonna be complete before the school year starts next year?
And it's going on right now.
It's going on right now, and it's adding about 75 seats to the
About
lunchroom.
100 something.
Okay, okay.
Thank you all. Just on this, item, of course, I think we could put 15 million and it's not enough. We could put 20 million and it's not enough. I did the math, cause I'm very good at math, and if we, estimate that we used to have a $1 billion deferred maintenance project ahead of us, that would probably be about 1.2 billion today with inflation, which would take us with $10 million, 120 years to get to, right? So, and I think the public has to realize that. Like, I absolutely agree. $6 million is going to go like that. And we'll put some from fund balance, and we as a board can decide as revenues increase to say that's where we would like to see revenues if they're higher than we projected, or we could look at things like that. But at the end of the day, we're always challenged with the fact that the need is so much bigger than what we have here. So just you know, thank you for the four. You've heard the board as that's always going to be a higher need, and maybe we have opportunity. I do think it's important to bring this up. I was very surprised, and I want to look into this further about the comment regarding revenue increase in property tax for Hamilton County being as low as it was in spite of all the construction that we're having. And I don't know the math of that or how that works, but for all of us who see apartment buildings going up and buildings going up and a million things happening around our city, and by the way, pilot funds do still contribute to schools, so it's not that the pilot funds aren't contributing to schools, so that's happening. I'm a finance guy. I cannot explain how we're having all that boom happening, how my house doubled in price and things happened all over the place, and our revenue is being projected to be, what was it, 5% increase? Not even 2%
Property
increase.
tax too.
2% increase.
Sales tax was 5%.
Sales tax 5%.
The math ain't mathing, Mr. Perez.
It's not working. So I those that know much more than I do, I recommend that you look into that, because that's the growth is going to demand more from us. The growth is going to require better facilities because they're coming from many places due to what Hamilton County is bringing. And if that growth is not turning into increased property tax revenue, then I have no idea how we'll build the future schools that we're going to build. So, but anyways, that to me from last meeting just stuck in my head as I do not understand how that's happening. All right, we'll move on. We got two more, and I would love for us to move through, but this is our time and our work session, and I respect the fact that everybody has concerns and views on all of this. So every employee valued. Just a quick question for me. Salary raises, what does that mean percentage-wise for the average teacher in Hamilton County?
It's 5% a step.
Okay, 5% and the step.
Yep.
And the step's usually about 1% or 5% or something. Okay. Any questions or comments?
No, I'd like to read something though, just to make sure, and 5%, so you're saying it's 5% plus a little more, counting the step, so. in
Now,
this-
recognize though that there are lanes in those steps that don't get.
Yeah.
Right. I shared that I would read this. This came from a teacher in my district. The school places so many demands on teachers and expects them to dedicate their time, energy, and efforts outside of their clock hours. The work never ends. I leave school and work on lesson plans at home or paperwork. This job has made me neglect myself, my family, and my friends. I feel like I can only deal with this career another year at the most. I'm definitely looking for an out ASAP. There is no way to make this work in a healthy way for me. And the education system in the United States is broken. So I'm glad to see the 5% plus, because I think, as I said earlier, the governor is looking at increasing salaries for starting teachers, but has not put in money in the state budget for educators any different than what's already there, so.
He put in money for raises.
He did do that.
Yeah.
I did not see that in the.
Yeah. But you know how it is. I mean, it never ends up that they use a percentage which doesn't translate and causes more confusion. It's just built into the base.
Yeah, so it was included when we have our TISA projection, it's already built into that.
Okay. But then counting what they're giving and what we're adding, it's a minimum of 5% plus the step. Okay.
Ms. Black.
Hi. Mrs. Thurman has spoken before, she's not here, about flat raises. And I do want to voice my concern as far as I'm excited to give folks a raise. I really am. But when you give percentage raises, I don't know if, I need a whiteboard, but if you have an employee making, say, $35,000 a year, and you give them a 5% raise, that's $1,750 a year, which ends up being $1,750 divided by it's $145 a month. Whereas if you have an employee making $125,000 a year and you give them a 5% raise, that's $6,250 a year, which per month would be $6,250. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be about a $500 raise. When you give percentage raises across a group of employees, you widen the gap between the people at the bottom who make the least and the people at the top who make the most. I've had a long career, about 20 years. And I know at the beginning of my career what it was like to get to the end of the month and literally have $12 left. And I know what it's like to get to the end of the month and have to choose and not have any money left at the end of the month. And I would like to see us run some numbers as to what could we do around flat raises to not cause this spread to just keep growing and growing. Everyone has experienced inflation. Everyone's paying the same for a gallon of gas. Everybody's paying the same for eggs. Everybody's paying the same. You know, we've all had either our rent or property taxes or, you know, in inflation or like increase in mortgage interest. All of us are experiencing those same cost increases. But to give a percentage raise will only, you know, instead of giving some at the bottom a $1,200 raise and the folks at the top a $6,000 raise, if we could give everybody a $3,500 raise, it doesn't do anything to compress or expand that spread, but it lifts everybody up and really helps with inflation. And it really helps the people at the bottom the most that really are struggling to make it, the folks who do have to choose between buying their kid a new pair of shoes and paying the phone bill. It makes a big difference. And I would just like to go on record to say I would like to see us think about this in a different way instead of look at percentage. Mrs. Thurman has suggested find the highest paying teacher in Hamilton County, classroom teacher, highest paid Hamilton County classroom teacher, figure out what a certain percentage, a 5% raise would be for them, and give that amount of money to everyone and bring everybody up. Because I've also experienced a lot of privilege, and I know what it's like to live at that upper echelon for a household income. And the difference between $3,500 and maybe $6,000 at a family living at the top of that, it doesn't make a big difference in their lives. But folks who are struggling day to day, folks who are making $35,000 or $40,000 a year, that amount of money, the difference between a $1,200 raise and a $3,500 raise would be incredibly impactful for families in Hamilton County. And that money stays in our community. And those families spend that money in our community, and it goes back to supporting our community. Whereas people at the top don't necessarily have to spend all of that money. They stick it in a savings account because they're not living paycheck to paycheck. And I would really like for us to take a step back and look at the needs of our community and where we are right now at this point in time, and think about this a little bit differently. Thank you.
So here, again, I bring the competitiveness. I won't put any of this pressure on you, because I think this goes all around, right? Everybody knows teachers need to get paid better, and everybody knows that as professionals, we're gonna lose top professionals, not to other school districts, to other competition. You know, as businesses begin to also feel the employee crisis, they're opening their doors to others. So in addition to that, when I receive requests to discuss teacher salary, and I hear it, you know, sometimes it's a zero-sum game, right? We need to increase these. Why are we increasing these? Well, my answer to that is possibly your answer, because in this competitive environment, these or these are going to go find somewhere else if we don't also bring them along, and that presents a challenge. So at the end of the day, we have to do it. I do want to just mention, as I've done before, but it's a good place, is in the competitive nature of hiring teachers today, the staffing for recruiting and retention and HR is insufficient in our schools. We have very few staff, and they're overworked, and they're exhausted, and they're doing everything they can to try to hire how many this year? 300 or so? 200 or so?
Total?
Yeah. Well, no, and all the new positions. Yeah, so what's a good number there?
They talk about it in transactions,
Yeah.
not just hires.
So anyways, either way,
Thousands.
but we have, so we have thousands of transactions and very few staff trying to return phone calls, and all of us who've ever applied for jobs know the difference it makes when somebody calls us back immediately, when somebody emails us, when somebody tells us, hey, we want to meet with you, when somebody shows excitement. And when we sent an email and a month goes by and 2 months go by and nobody seems to have even noticed that we had the one interview and then we never hear back from anybody. We all know that world and the difference it makes. And in this type of competitive environment, we're going to have to step up our game. So it's not, even though it's so much more money, we're finding ourselves still saying, how do we make this happen? So.
For the record, I just want to make sure that we get this out there, that in past two budget years, this will be the highest increase of teacher salaries in over a decade.
But at Ms. Black's point, and I hear you, and that's very true, but this has also been the highest inflation our teachers have experienced
I just want to be clear.
Yeah, and so but again, 2% increase on property tax, 5% increase on sales tax. We're finding ourselves, and of course, sales tax will increase as inflation happens, because we still got to buy food, and it's taxed at 20% more. So it's natural to see a sales tax increase, not taxed at 20% more, but we're taxing a 20% increase. So some of those are natural, some of those are feeling the squeeze. At the end of the day, all of our team, all of our staff is feeling the squeeze, and I'll say we need to do better, but I'm not putting on you figuring out magic math, right? Like this is what we have. So thank you for what you're doing.
Was that data provided to us from the county commission?
The growth?
The 2%, the 5%?
All right, last item on this board, every community served. These are lower volume, I almost said lesser items, but they're not, they're just lower volume items. Other than budget, I really, again, want to focus on budget, but I think in another meeting, I think us and the community, as you're looking at this alternate educational program seats, what you're looking to do, I think that'll be, I mean, you can speak to it a bit, but as far as budget, if anybody has any question or any comment, I'd rather focus on that. So, Mr. Keene?
You have it listed here, Opportunity High. I was just curious where that's going to be stationed at.
Say it again, sorry.
Opportunity High.
Looking at locations, right now, one of the ones that we're leaning towards, there are 6 portables at the old CSLA site that are new, and looking at possibility of that site.
And my other question would be, would there be any opportunity for them to be a part of Gerald Harris's construction career center?
I think those are the type of things that we really want to see happen. Is, you know, right now, I would say we're in the dreaming phase
Right,
of what this
right.
could look like.
And him and I are on another thing, and we were talking about it also. So, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on that? These aren't easy documents to pull together. They look easy when you turn them in like this, even though we struggle with them ourselves. But thank you very much. Thank you to the board for participating. I do encourage the board. Our next meeting will be April 10th. You got it here. April 10th is the next one. Same here. You will be addressing, as individual board members can communicate to the staff and ask questions. And then on April 20th, if all looks right, we will be voting for our final budget. So please make your observations. Again, working with budgets forever, Ms. Hewitt and I congratulate you. You're always going to be the bad person, right? It's like you can't make money grow on trees, but at the end of the day, we are trying to be integral in the way that we present the best opportunity for our students. So, thank you all, because I know that that's your heart, I know that's your intention, I know that's your goal. Thank you to the board.